Big event today is the Home Secretary's speech. No, it's not. Of course it isn't. It's Boris Johnson. I kid you. It's Boris Johnson. He's appearing just today. He's turning up for a fringe event at 1 p.m. today. Unusually, of course, not speaking from the podium as he would have as a Foreign Secretary last year. You'll be attending that event. It's the hot ticket event of conference. What is Boris Johnson going to say that's going to change anything about this conference, change anything about the fortunes of the Conservative Party, or indeed the fortunes of Brexit?
Well, first of all, unfortunately, I'm not going to be there because
I'm the only person who won't be.
I know. I'm pre-booked to be with Christopher Hope of The Telegraph doing his podcast, so that's very unfortunate, but I was booked in to do this in March. What's he going to say? I think he is going to emphasise the failures of Chequers, that simply isn't Brexit. The fact that a proper Brexit was our manifesto commitment. We all got elected on the basis that we would deliver Brexit and we'd be out of the single market and out of the customs union, and that Chequers is keeping us in part of the single market, and we read in the newspapers today we might be kept in the customs union indefinitely.
This is the front page of the Times today.
Yes. That would be a complete failure. That really is not leaving. It makes Liam Fox's department entirely redundant. It would be shameful if the government went down that route, and would mean that we had put in the manifesto at the last election something that turned out to be untrue. It would be as unsatisfactory a situation as one could imagine. And so I hope that the Times is not correct, though the Times is usually very accurate on these things.
Well, so what are you hoping that Boris Johnson can actually do to perhaps bring the cabinet, the Remain-dominated cabinet now, back to, well, their own manifesto? Because this is the issue you've always had at the European Research Group. You've been accused of being rebels, and your point has always been, well, we're not rebelling against the Tory government. It's the Tory government that's rebelling against the Tories, because you're actually pushing a line which was, as you say, was what was in the Conservative Party manifesto at the last general election.
That's absolutely right, and the European Research Group and members of it haven't voted against the government once. It's the other side of the argument that voted against the government as the Withdrawal Act was passed through Parliament. So the honour of being a rebel does not belong to us. What can Boris do about it? Well, I think we will see that the mood of the conference is very firmly anti-Chequers and pro-Canada, that people here want us to get a proper free trade deal. They want us to be out of the European Union. They want the promises that were made in Lancaster House and in the Tory party manifesto to be delivered upon. They don't want us to be half in, half out doing the EU hokey-cokey.
Well, so why isn't Theresa May, why isn't Philip Hammond, why aren't they listening?
That's a very good question. Philip Hammond, rather extraordinarily, said that we would have to erect a hard border in Ireland if we left without a deal, which, as it happens, would be against the law. He might be well advised to read the Withdrawal Act that specifically says we cannot erect any new infrastructure on the border. So the government doesn't seem to be very clear on what it wants to do. It seems to be in a bit of a muddle, and I think it's time for the Prime Minister to give a clear lead and to start saying that what she will do is ensure that we leave in a sensible way and that we stick to her previous commitments.
Is it about being clear, or is it about more project fear? And actually, this whole campaign by the current cabinet is about telling us that, well, look at the alternatives, no deal will be terrible, it'll all be awful, what we're going to offer is going to be better than that, when what they're offering in terms of Chequers isn't leaving, it isn't Brexit, it certainly isn't what I as a Leave voter voted for, and judging by the polls, it's not what most Leave voters voted for. Is this not just a cunning wheeze by a Remain-dominated cabinet, Remain Prime Minister, a Remain campaigning Chancellor, a Remain-dominated civil service to keep us in the EU?
Well, I think the problem of the Tory party is that if your analysis is right, the Tory party cannot win the next general election. 70% of our voters wanted to leave the European Union.
Well, who will they vote for instead?
They'll stay at home. That's basically what happened in 1997. In 1997, there wasn't necessarily a huge switch of voters, but there was a big decline in turnout, and primarily of Conservative voters. I think the great risk of getting Jeremy Corbyn into office is a failure to deliver a clean Brexit. And I'm afraid the government's fudging about at the moment is pointing us in that direction.
So at what point do MPs, whether they are supporters of yours, they're part of the European Research Group, some 60 Eurosceptic MPs, or whether they're Remain MPs who are facing threats at their seats? A lot of MPs who had very safe seats up to June 2017 suddenly found themselves in marginal seats. When are they going to wake up to the threat, which you say is the case, that if they don't deliver Brexit, that they could be ousted at the next general election, whenever it is? They'll be punished by the electorate, where they might say, well, those people aren't going to vote for Jeremy Corbyn. As you say, they're going to sit on their hands, they're going to stay at home, and that will see Jeremy Corbyn government. When do you think those MPs are going to wake up and require that the Prime Minister delivers her own manifesto commitment?
Well, I think when it comes to votes in the House of Commons, the government will find it very hard to get a Chequers-style deal through. And if the Times is correct, it isn't even a Chequers-style deal. It is complete, abject surrender.
Just to clarify, yes, this is the report is that Theresa May is preparing to limit Britain's ability, as you say, to strike free trade deals, another concession to the European Union. Now,
it's not a concession. It's remaining in the European Union, lock, stock and barrel, and not having any vote. I mean, it would be absolutely outrageous if the government decides to do this. It would be a total failure of the government's policy, and it would mean that probably 2 departments of state have either been OTAs or will become OTAs.
And that's Brexit Department and the International Trade Department. Okay, you're saying this is outrageous. It can't possibly happen. It wouldn't be Brexit. And yet you continue to say you are loyal to the Prime Minister. You've never voted against her. We don't want to change a Prime Minister, a change of leadership. We want a change of policy. It doesn't look like you're going to get that change of policy. So at what point do you say, that's enough, Theresa May, we're going to put those 45 letters in to the 1922 committee, to the chair of that, to Graham Brady, and we are going to force her a vote of confidence and remove Theresa May?
Well, currently, the policy not only appears to be bad, but appears to be pie in the sky, because the EU doesn't want it. Tory Eurosceptics don't want it, Tory Europhiles don't want it, and the Labour Party doesn't want it.
And the voters don't want it.
And the voters don't want it. So it's quite hard to see how this policy gets turned into law. And therefore, when it comes to Parliament, if it ever gets there, because the EU would have to agree something in the first place, if it ever gets there, there'll be opportunity to vote it down. And therefore, it remains an issue about the policy, not about the personnel.
What about the fears that a number of Brexiteers in the Cabinet have spoken to me of this week, that actually, whether or not Chequers gets voted in or voted out, the reality is that we are looking at the possibility of, if we face no deal, that the Remain majority in the House of Commons, and bearing in mind the reason this issue was put to a referendum of the people was because MPs didn't represent the ordinary voters on this issue. If the Remain majority in Parliament decide to vote to extend Article 50, we don't leave on the 29th of March, possibly opening up the possibility of a time frame where we could have a second referendum if there's more pressure for that, whether people have a say on the final deal, if there is any option of a final deal. What do you think the risks are of that? They're saying in Cabinet, we're sticking with this, we're sticking with Chequers, because that's the best of the bad options available to us.
Well, I think they should take the trouble to read a little bit of Erskine May and a little bit of the standing orders of the House of Commons, and then try and work out how this proposition actually comes to pass. The government has control of proceedings in the House of Commons. There isn't a vote that comes across because a few MPs want it. What happens is the government allocates time within the timetable, has control of this timetable, and the extension of Article 50 would be a straightforward prerogative power. It can only be done if the government wants to do it. So when cabinet ministers say this may happen, they're either saying that the government is going to fall, which I think is highly unlikely, or they don't understand the Constitution.
Can I just ask, on a completely different matter, I've found myself in a situation where I am at a Conservative Party conference, but I won't be able to attend Labour Party conference next year because
you were very badly behaved.
I was very badly behaved.
Shocking.
I made a joke. I made a joke.
Well, Labour Party conference, that is badly behaved.
But they're going to ban me as punishment for making a joke that they didn't like, that they think was offensive. I didn't think it was offensive.
Well, they banned you for 1 year, and the next reward is to be banned for 2 years. Lucky you.
Do you think political parties should be banning journalists because they don't like the jokes they make?
Of course I don't. You cannot hope to bribe or twist, thank God, the British journalist, but seeing what the man, or in your case woman, will do unbribed, there's no occasion to. No, I certainly wouldn't ban any
benefits for private education, everybody.
No, just from reading a dictionary of quotations.
But the Conservative Party doesn't have a safe space, I've noted.
Well, other than talk radio, this seems pretty safe space to me. Look, safe space is nonsense, and you cannot say, if you believe in free speech, that you can never be offended. You can say that people shouldn't shout fire in a crowded room and that they shouldn't incite murder and things like that. But I think this is really an extreme snowflakiness that Labour is showing, and it really underlines the fact that the Labour Party doesn't believe in free speech. And Jeremy Corbyn wants to regulate newspapers because they're occasionally rude about him and they don't worship at the shrine of Mr. Corbyn. I think we need healthy free speech, and we need to have the Morning Star at the Tory Party conference, and we need to have the equivalent at the Labour Party conference, and they should be open to that. And it's small-minded and undemocratic to ban people, and frankly it'll be their loss at the Labour Party conference once they start banning you and others. There'll be nobody else there.